Welcome, and it's lovely to have you today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And we are, of course, in the midst of the story of the Garden of Eden. And I do have screen sharing turned on, and now you can see, I believe, the text. I'd like to see it too. I find it. For some reason, it's not showing it. Hello. Come on. I don't know why I'm not able to see this, but I can't.
Well, we can see your screen, yes.
I know, but for some reason, my screen isn't showing. Let me stop this and try it again. Let's do something here. Oh, David's joining us. That's lovely.
But David, you've missed the technical problems.
Yes, there is I may have to restart. Okay,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No.
How are you ever gonna
What?
up with us if you miss the technical glitches?
I know.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. It's opened up. All right, that's much better. Okay, let's try this now. Interesting that you should see the text that I could not see. There we go. How's that? All right.
Can see that.
Yeah, I'm glad I
Looks
did.
the same to us.
Well, I want it to look a little larger. Let me see what I can do here.
It looks larger to us now.
Yes. Oh, oh, there we go. All right.
It looms even larger.
By the way, David, happy Mother's Day.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. Yes.
So we were in this conversation that the snake was having with Eve, right? And the woman had just said to him that that they were told that they could not eat nor touch it, all right? And to which the snake replies, Vayomer hanachash el haisha, the snake said to the woman, Lo mot temutun, you will certainly not die. Lo mot temutun, you will certainly not die. Okay. Dachafa ad shinag abo. He pushed Eve, until she touched the tree. Amarla, and he said to her, Keshem she'ein mita b'negi'ah. You see, there was no death involved in touching it. Kach ein mita ba'achila. So there will be no death associated with eating it either. And last time we did this Torah Tamima, where he raises the interesting question as to did not Adam, after all, simply build a fence around the instruction not to eat it by saying you couldn't touch it at all? And here we see the idea that sometimes when you add, you actually detract. And Torah Tamima had a wonderful answer as to the specific distinctions between those circumstances. So, for example, why you're not allowed to touch food on chametz on Pesach, leaven on Pesach, but you're allowed to touch food on Yom Kippur, both times when you're not allowed to eat that particular designation of food. So, at any rate, you'll need to look at our previous study to see the answer to that and his brilliant analysis there. So let's go on. Okay, not only that, ki yodea Elohim, God knows, ki bayom acholchem mimenu, that on the day you eat of it, v'nifkachu einechem, your eyes will be opened, v'hiyitem kelohim, and you will be like powerful people, yod e tov vara, knowing good and bad. And I checked over the Targum here, right? And his his translation is Rav Revin, great people. Hakimin ben Tav Levish, recognizing between good and evil. Yes, Lauren.
So this, I mean, is an obvious question, and I'm sure we've discussed it before, but if they didn't know good from evil yet, how could it be considered like an evil act of any sort to have disobeyed God?
Of course. And that forces us to understand that when it says tov vara, not tov vera, but tov vara, it is actually, is it when you take two words and they combine to form one concept? And when we look at tov vara, so for example, if I am not mistaken, there is this very awful story in the book of Judges of the concubine of Gibeah. And there are other examples too, where it talks about the act of copulation and the fact that that particular act has both in it good and bad. And Yod A means, of course, experience, right? So we also know that in the development, and we'll see how the story is going to support what I just said to you. And this is something I learned, and I want to give credit to Rabbi Professor Hanan Brichto, probably of, I would suspect, of blessed memory at HUC, who taught this passage in a wonderful, wonderful elective that I was able to take and discussed the inner workings of this particular parsha. We've mentioned him before, but this is the issue of tov vara, and it says, either it says that he didn't know of her tov vara, or they did, in fact, involve themselves in tov vara. So in some ways, it's probably a euphemism, and there are total sexual connotations to what is being said here. At any rate, let's go on to see what Rashi has to say about this. Ki Yodea, okay, for he knows, that is, God knows. And Rashi's comment is, this is what the snake is sort of implying to Eve. Kol omein, any craftsman, soneh et bnei umanuto, he hates, any craftsman hates his fellow craftsman. Min ha'etz achal, because God ate from this tree, uvara et ha'olam, and created the world. Let me keep going a little bit more, if I may. Vatere ha'isha ki tov ha'etz, and the woman saw that the tree was good lema'achal, to eat, was good, it was good for consumption, right?
Um,
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, there was another Rashi on
Was
on the other verse.
Let's take a look.
I
Yes, sorry, you're right. Thank you. Vehiyitim Kelohim, and you shall be like God, or like powerful people, Yotzrei Olamot, capable of creating worlds. Now, interestingly enough, on some senses, perhaps, you could say that the snake was telling the truth, in that our ability to procreate is, in fact, a type of creating worlds. And that's why we call it procreation, right? That we are, in fact, there is such a miracle involved in procreation, that's involved. But at this particular point, I want to reflect on the fact that that when it says on the day they eat of it, they will die. We know the story well enough to know that on the day they ate of it, they didn't die. But what happened is they became mortal. So that when it says on the day you eat of it, you will die, it means you will become mortal. You will experience death. And for that reason, at this particular point, human beings were immortal. And that is the reason why they were not given the ability to procreate at this particular point. There are lots of deep and psychological and spiritual issues going on here, because the issue of our mortality kicks us into the question of, it certainly pushes the question of, for what purpose are we alive to begin with? And I personally am not satisfied with simply saying in order to procreate, because it's sort of a circular argument. But at any rate, it definitely, the fact that we do face mortality at this point raises the issue as to what purpose does life have after all? At any rate, that is the reason why the tree of life is not at this point forbidden. And later on, it's not that it's forbidden, it's just that the tree of life is sort of put off limits. So there's, again, a lot of reality involved in all of this.
So when they call it the tree of life, is it referring to the issue of mortality, or is it referring to the issue of being able to procreate?
So the tree of knowledge of good and evil is procreation. The tree of life is immortality.
Okay, but the knowledge of good and evil phrase you're saying is a euphemism that's related to procreation.
Correct. And you look at the development of a child and how it is only at puberty where they become aware of their sexuality. It's at that time that they have to sort of figure out and become very aware of their sexuality in a way that they're not aware, that little
Well, yeah, it's a milestone of awareness. It's not the beginning of awareness.
Yes, agreed. It also, by the way, is the beginning of socialization on a different kind of level. So an awareness of being part
A
of this.
milestone, but not the beginning, yeah.
Yes. Well, this
Especially
okay,
if you
that's
went to
fine.
preschool.
Okay, well, I certainly am not going to quibble. Right. I think basically it's been described as when very little children play, they playing alongside of each other as opposed to playing with each other. But I don't think this is the time to sort of get
Yeah,
into.
that's too general.
Yeah, and I don't want to quibble.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not, the point is well made, and I'm going to let it go. All right. So going back to this next verse, so the woman sees ki tov ha'etz lamachal, that this tree is good for eating, v'chi ta'avahu la'enayim, and it is desire. And this word ta'ava has the meaning of lust and appetite and desire for the eyes. And again, those are words that are associated with sexuality. V'nechmad ha'etz lahaskil, and the tree is desirable in order to, lahaskil would mean to gain understanding, right? To deepen understanding or knowledge. Vatikach mipiryo vatochal, and she took from its fruit and she ate. Vatiten gam leisha ima v'yochal, and she gave it also to her husband, to her man, with her, and he ate it as well. Telling lines, right?
So I can see definitely how this is related to sexual appetite, but
Yeah.
even if you're looking at just food appetite, there's still a kosher versus non-kosher aspect of, if you're going by your appetite, you're definitely going to go for that delicious looking smelling cheeseburger, you
Right.
know, or pork steak. But if
Yes.
you're going by a God-given commandment,
Right.
despite your physical appetite for something, you're going to abstain.
I agree. And frankly, I think they are all related. The issue is how one controls one's impulses, because appetite, of course, is an impulse. And what is so wonderful about all this is that if it were not for our impulses, we would die. And yet at the same time, if we allow ourselves to be governed by our impulses, we will also die.
And to quote, I think Guns N' Roses, appetite for destruction, because you also have an appetite that makes you want to lash out physically and hurt people, but you want to abstain from it and not just go, like as you say, what's your phrase? Doing what doesn't come naturally.
Yes, right. Yes. So all this and an appetite for war, okay, which is just an example of what you said about the appetite for destruction. Yes. So look at what we're getting into here. Some really great psychological issues. So and also, by the way, the fact that so often our eyes are what leads us to that appetite. It just, so it talks about how she looked, she saw, right? She used her eyes. So Kiodea. Let's see. No, we got that one. Vatera Haisha, and the woman saw. Ra'atad varav. So Rashi actually goes in a lovely way here, and he says she saw his words. Shel Nachash, of the snake. She saw his words, using that in a different kind of sense, right? Vahan ola or vahin ula, and they pleased her, right? We know about eye candy, right? But in this case, it was what the snake was saying to her. This pleased her, ve'eminato, and she believed him. Ki tov ha'etz, that the tree was good, lihiyot kelohim. So interesting. In other words, to be like Elohim, like powerful, give them a certain power, right? That's the idea of Elohim. And when we refer to God as Eloheinu, we're saying that we are giving God control and power over us. And we also know, of course, that so often the act of sex can also be an act of power, of trying to overpower and control, etc. And that it was, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was to say that Chabad keeps translating Elohim as angels, both in the text and in the Rashi, in verse 5 and in this verse.
Thing. It's certainly not inaccurate per se, right? Of course, I wouldn't accuse them of that in this case for sure. But okay, interesting. Sometimes it is. So I think it's good that you mentioned that. V'chi ta'ava hula einayim, and indeed it was a delight, right, or a desire for the eyes. By the way, the only reason why I have some difficulty with angels is the fact that angels, of course, do not procreate. They have nothing to do with sexuality. So, Kamosha Amar, so here, as Amarla, as he said to her, when it said it was desirable for the eyes, as the angel said, as the snake, forgive me, as the snake said to her, the nifkachu einechem, your eyes will be opened.
And by the way, Chabad specifies the angels in a Rashi from the previous verse as creators of worlds.
Okay.
That they helped God create the world.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so that's the creating that they do, not procreative.
Okay. All right. I'm not gonna discuss that too much. I'd have to definitely chew on that and think about it. It sounds like it's based on a particular interpretation that they're comfortable with or following. At any rate,
Well, it actually says from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer.
that's
I
that.
don't.
Okay, well, that's a very authoritative source. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is an early source, and that must be the interpretation they have there. That's a very good source, I have to say, and that's the story where we're told how the snake pushed her and stuff like that. That's where Adam is the one who told Eve that they weren't allowed to touch it either, etc. That's all from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. But
It's chapter 13, so you can look that up and see if they actually use the word angels.
I will. I'll try and do that if I can find my copy of it and look at it or check it out on Safari. Yeah. At any rate, yeah. I mean, it's an authoritative text. I wouldn't quibble with that either. Okay, onwards. All right. Kitov ha'etz, that the tree was good, liot kelohim, right? To be like Elohim. I'm not going to translate it then. Let's see. Yeah, we did this. Sorry. I'm trying to find the place. Right. Okay. V'nechmad lahaskil. And also, desirable. Nechmad, also these ideas of finding someone hamud, right? Charming or desirable or, sweet.
Cute.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Lahaskil for understanding, right? Kamusha Marla, just as he said to her, Yod E Tovara, knowing Tovara. But Titen Gamla Isha, and she gave it also to her husband. This is a sweet Rashi too. Shelot Tamut, that he should, uh, that he should not die, so that she should not die. Vayichyeh, and that he should live, right? Remember, because she was told that if she ate from this tree, they would die. And she didn't want to take a chance that she would die and he wouldn't. So she also gave him from it to eat, right? V'yisa acheret, and he'd marry another woman. That is so interesting. Again, this sounds like this is from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, right? That idea of him marrying another woman. It's definitely something that I don't think one would think of immediately. Yes, David.
So what I don't understand here about this passage about
Yeah.
her giving to him
Yes.
is that, if I remember right from our last week's discussion, it was actually Adam who told Eve not to touch we concluded it was Adam who told Eve not to touch the tree because, right. So he knew already, he knew better, right? So why did he eat the apple? So
that's right. Actually, you're going to find out it's not an apple, at least according to Rashi. And the tradition, it's not an apple. But yeah.
But why did he eat part of it? She gave it part of it to him, right? Why did he do that if he already knew he shouldn't do that? And he already told her not to do. Yeah, that's where I'm getting lost.
Okay, I hear you. So there are a few approaches one might take on that. Okay. One is he didn't realize what it was. That's a possibility. Okay, not necessarily, but it's a possibility that she knew what it was and he didn't. Okay. The other piece too is just human nature. Okay, because Adam is held accountable for what he did, and he is going to face the consequences of his decision. Okay, that somehow she was able to get him to eat it as well. And it's possible that I'm not going to come up with a really satisfactory answer to your question, and that we just have to allow the fact that she had that influence over him to convince him to eat from the tree as well. But you can go back and think he wasn't really sure what the fruit was. She just gave it to him to eat.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's I that's fine. I mean, you could take this on a number of levels, but basically what we're really assuming here is he was unaware, or the whole thought here is that he's unaware of what he's doing or unaware of what it is, and so therefore he's not taking the appropriate precaution against it, right?
And so that's a possibility. I myself don't necessarily find that compelling. Okay.
No.
But nevertheless, it's a possibility, because if he didn't recognize the fruit, he should have asked her, "Where's this from?" Okay.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that. So at least that would support saying, okay, well, he didn't know what it was, but that's still.
I think David, you got to realize that the snake was very, very powerful in suggestions, and that's why part of it was the snake's fault, not
right.
Adam.
Right, but the snake was responsible for Eve and not for Adam. We're not told the snake convinced Adam. We're told Eve apparently convinced Adam to go ahead and eat. And we just don't know what she said to him or what she told him, whether she used the same arguments that the snake used. We just don't know. We have to simply, at the bottom line, accept the fact that he ate it, that she gave it to him and he ate it. Okay. And maybe as we read the story, we'll have a better sense of the dynamics going on here. Okay.
Well, and this whole thing also is about, and Harlan, I agree with you in the sense that it's about the persuasion, compelling, all this stuff. So maybe maybe Eve is also is channeling some of the snake. But anyway, that's okay. We'll go on. I
Right.
get the.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So going on with this, there's this word gam in the sentence that doesn't seem necessary. In other words, it says she gave it also to her man. And it could have just said, and she gave it to her man, period. What do we need this also? That's what Rashi's coming to explain. L'rabot behema v'chaya, to include all the animals as well. All the animals, all got the food, all got this food. And so let's go on just a little bit. It's so difficult to stop here, but eventually we're going to have to do this. Vatipakachna einei shteihem, and the eyes of both of them were opened. Vayedu, and they knew, they understood, ki erumim heim, that they were naked. Vayitperu alei te'ena, and they sewed leaves of the fig tree. They sewed fig leaves. Vayasu lahem chagurot, and they made outfits for themselves. And that's what is going to tell us what fruit they actually ate. But let's see if we can do this a little bit more, right? But tipakachna, their eyes were open. Le'inyan hachochma diber hakatuv. Scripture is actually referring to their knowledge, okay, that they became aware of something, and that's the opening their eyes. V'lo le'inyan re'iyah mamash. It wasn't that they now opened their eyes for the first time, could see physically. It's talking about a mental seeing. V'sof hamikra mocheach, and as we go on, of course, he says the end of the scriptural verse proves that that's what it's talking about. Vayedu ki erumim heim, and they now understood that they were naked. And this is the thing, Rashi says, Af hasumeh yodea keshehu erum. Even a blind person knows when he is naked. Elamahu v'yadu. So so the difficulty Rashi's raising here is, why does it have to say that they opened their eyes, that their eyes were opened, right? What are we talking about? If we're talking about their also being physically naked, that's the point Rashi's making. Even a blind person knows when he is physically naked, right? So what does it mean when it says they knew that they were naked? Mitzvah, the answer is mitzvah achat haita b'yadam. They had one mitzvah, just one commandment to observe. Minitar talu hemena, and they denuded themselves of it. They were stripped of it. And this is I think this is such a powerful metaphor to understand one of the great issues involved in mitzvot, in commandments, that you spiritually clothe yourself with commandments. And the reason is that if you think about clothing and the function of clothing has partially to allow us modesty, and some would say that is the most essential element of clothing, is that it allows us not to feel naked. Clothing also protects us from the elements, and clothing also gives us dignity. It also, of course, has deep psychological ideas besides as well. Yes, go ahead.
So, okay, but it said they covered themselves with fig leaves. Yes. So I guess my questions are, to me, it's maybe the other way is, does modesty now equal mortality, right? Because all of a sudden they realized, that they were naked, right? In the sense that they hadn't realized before, and right, decided they had to cover themselves up with fig leaves. Yes. So that kind of, and then the other part is, yes, you're right in that. I agree with you about, what clothing does, etc., and what it provides us. But also, is it possible that they were trying to cover up the fact that they'd now been denuded, right? So, yes, they had not obeyed the one commandment. So now what do? You try to cover it up, literally. And they will, and they're going to be. You're going to see
Absolutely. The
And,
story is delightful. We will not be able to do that today.
by the way, figs, the figs representing fertility have to do with their testicular shape.
Exactly.
And that's since antiquity.
Right.
So
Exactly. Well, we're going to get to it right now. Yes. Yes. Or right. That it does have to do with that. Aletena, fig leaves, right? Leaves of figs. Hu ha'etz she'achlu mimenu. That is the tree they ate from. They ate from a fig tree. But davar shenitkalkalu bo nitkanu, because in the matter of which they were spoiled, right? They ruined things. They also mended themselves. They tried to mend themselves with the article that had robbed them of their immortality. Going on. Aval sha'ar heitzim, but with regard to the other trees, min militol alehem, and they prevented those other trees, made it impossible for them to take their leaves. Okay, so that's the other piece too, which is also worthy of some consideration as to why this is also a factor involved. In other words, that they weren't able to remove the leaves from the other trees, but this particular tree did want to help them because it realized, you might say, I know I'm giving anthropomorphic qualities, but this tree knew, since it had been the reason for them to become ruined, this tree also felt a need to help them at the time. But the other trees weren't, so they didn't give their leaves. It's speaking very poetically. Umipnei ma lo niparsem ha'etz. So Rashi asks the question, well, why doesn't the text tell us what tree they ate from? Why doesn't it tell us that they ate from the fig tree? She'ein hakadosh baruch hu chafetz lehonot bria. Okay, because the Holy One, blessed be He, does not desire to. Lehonot means like sort of to take advantage or to undermine, something like that, any creature, shelo yachlimuhu, that they would not try to humiliate this tree, vayomru, by saying, zehu shelakach sheluka haolam ayodo. This is the tree by which the world was punished. Interesting idea. Some really very sweet and lovely thoughts going on there. So, okay, let's stop right here. And of course, this is not the end of the story. We have more to go. Mark the next page for next time. See if this will work. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to stop the share, and I don't know if there's any other comments before.
Yeah.
Yes,
I do.
Yes.
I was wondering, when they saw themselves naked, God was in the garden and said, "How do you know you're naked?" And he said, "Did you eat from the tree?" And they said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I will definitely clothe you." He gave them the articles to clothe.
Okay. So, spoiler alert. Of course, this is what we're going to cover next time, Harlan. Yes. Ultimately, God made them better clothing than what they have made for themselves. And there may be something to that as well.
And he said, I ate of the tree, the fruit of the tree, and I also ate of the bagel and lox and drank of the coffee.
Yum, yum.
Okay, with that, I'm going to stop the recording. On a happy note. All right.